The acquisition. Sophie Chen brushed a strand of dark hair from her face as she peered into the microscope. The lab was quiet at this late hour, just how she preferred it. At 32, she'd become the reluctant CEO of Chen Medical Research after her father's stroke 6 months ago. The company, once pioneering in rare disease treatments, was now drowning in debt despite their promising research. "You should go home, Dr. Chen," her assistant May said from the doorway. "The meeting tomorrow is at 8 sharp. Sophie rubbed her tired eyes. "Just reviewing the data one more time. The potential investor needs to understand what we're doing here isn't just about profit." What Sophie didn't say was that tomorrow's meeting with Donovan Capital would determine if her family's 20-year legacy survived another month. Morning arrived too quickly. Sophie chose her most professional navy suit, hoping to project confidence despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. The conference room of Donovan Capital gleamed with wealth, all glass, chrome, and power. Liam Donovan entered precisely on time, his tall frame commanding attention immediately. At 38, he'd built a reputation for transforming failing companies into profitable entities, often through aggressive restructuring. His steel-gray eyes assessed Sophie with clinical detachment as they shook hands. "Dr. Chen, your presentation package was interesting," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Your research has potential, but your business model is bleeding money." Sophie straightened her shoulders. "Our focus has been developing treatments for diseases affecting fewer than 10,000 people worldwide. It's not immediately profitable, Mr. Donovan, but it's vital work." "Vital doesn't pay researchers or keep lights on," Liam replied, sliding a document across the polished table. "My offer is straightforward. Donovan Capital acquires Chen Medical for 40% of market value with additional performance-based incentives if your current research yields marketable treatments." Sophie felt the blood drain from her face. 40%? That's barely enough to cover our debts. "It's generous considering your company will be bankrupt within 90 days. His voice remained perfectly even, as if discussing the weather rather than her family's life work. "And what happens to our research, to our team?" Sophie asked, fingers tightening around her pen. Liam's expression revealed nothing. "That's for me to decide once the acquisition is complete." Sophie stood abruptly. "I'm not just selling machines and patents, Mr. Donovan. We're developing a treatment for Hallermann-Reese syndrome. Children with this condition rarely live past 12. We're close to something that could change that." For a moment, something flickered in Liam's eyes. "Science doesn't work without capital, Dr. Chen. And capital means nothing without purpose," she countered. The boardroom fell silent. Liam studied her with newfound curiosity. "6 months," Sophie said suddenly. "Give me 6 months. I'll remain CEO. You provide emergency funding as a convertible note. If we achieve our next research milestone, we renegotiate terms. If not, you get your 40% deal." Liam leaned back, fingers forming a steeple beneath his chin. "Interesting counter. But I'd need oversight." "Fine, you can work from our facility 3 days a week." A smile curved his lips, the first genuine expression she'd seen. "You want me personally involved? Bold choice." "I want you to see exactly what you're buying, Mr. Donovan. The science, the patients, all of it." Something changed in the atmosphere between them. A challenge issued and accepted. "Very well, Dr. Chen," Liam said, extending his hand. As Sophie grasped his hand, she couldn't ignore the unexpected warmth that traveled up her arm. She just made a deal with the most ruthless venture capitalist in the city. Yet something told her there was more to Liam Donovan than cold calculations and profit margins. What she didn't know was that Liam had already decided to acquire Chen Medical weeks ago, but Sophie's passion had just changed his entire strategy. Laboratory tensions. The fluorescent lights of Chen Medical's main laboratory hummed overhead as Sophie adjusted her safety goggles. 2 weeks into their arrangement, and Liam Donovan had proven himself both an asset and an irritation. True to his word, he arrived every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday precisely at 8 a.m., impeccably dressed in suits that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Your cell cultivation process is inefficient," Liam commented, leaning against her workstation. Today, he'd abandoned his suit jacket, his crisp white shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows. "You're using outdated equipment that's costing you both time and precision." Sophie carefully pipetted a solution before responding. Equipment you could have upgraded in your first funding injection, but chose not to. I'm not investing in equipment until I understand the process. Throwing money at problems isn't always the solution. This had become their rhythm, challenge and counter-challenge. Sophie found herself simultaneously frustrated by his business-first mentality and impressed by how quickly he grasped complex scientific concepts. "Come here," she said finally, gesturing him toward the microscope. Liam approached, his subtle cologne momentarily distracting her as he leaned close to the eyepiece. "These are cells from a patient named Ellie. She's 9 years old with Hallermann-Reese. When treated with our compound," she switched the slide, "the protein expression changes dramatically. We're getting closer to stabilizing the effect." Liam studied the image, then straightened. His eyes met hers with unexpected intensity. "You know all your patients personally?" "The local ones, yes. Ellie comes in for sample collection every month." Sophie smiled slightly. "She wants to be a scientist, brings a new hypothesis about her condition every visit." Something shifted in Liam's expression. "I'd like to meet her." "Why?" Sophie asked, genuinely surprised. "Due diligence," he replied. But the answer felt incomplete. The following week, Ellie arrived with her parents. While Sophie collected her samples, Liam awkwardly introduced himself in the waiting area. To everyone's surprise, he produced a children's book about famous women scientists from his briefcase, a gift for Ellie. Later, Sophie found him in her office, reviewing financial projections. "That was unexpected," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "What was?" He didn't look up. "The book." Ellie was thrilled. His fingers paused over his tablet. "My sister wanted to be a scientist too." The personal revelation hung in the air between them. Sophie waited, sensing there was more. "She had a different condition, but the prognosis was similar." His voice remained even, controlled. "There was no treatment then." Sophie moved closer, perching on the edge of the desk. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago." Liam finally looked up, their eyes meeting. "Your approach to patient care is admirable, but financially unsustainable." The moment of connection shattered. Sophie stood up straight. "My approach is why we're making progress where others have failed. These are not just data points, Liam. No, they're liabilities on a balance sheet. Emotional investment clouds judgment." Spoken like someone who's never allowed himself to care about anything beyond quarterly returns. The tension between them crackled with something beyond professional disagreement. Liam stood, closing the space between them. "You think I don't understand what's at stake?" His voice dropped lower. "I understand perfectly. I also understand that without financial stability, your research dies with your company." They stood mere inches apart, neither willing to back down. Sophie became acutely aware of his breathing, the slight flesh on his cheeks, the way his eyes darted briefly to her lips before meeting her gaze again. "We should review the latest trial data," she said, finally, stepping back. "I think we've made a breakthrough." That night, long after everyone else had left, Sophie found Liam still in the lab, meticulously studying patient files. Their eyes met across the room, and for the first time, she wondered if there might be more to him than the ruthless businessman she'd first encountered. What she didn't know was that Liam had already decided to acquire Chen Medical weeks ago. But Sophie's passion had just changed his entire strategy.
Breaking barriers. The storm had come without warning, turning San Francisco's typically mild spring evening into a deluge. Sophie stared out the laboratory windows, watching lightning illuminate the skyline as she waited for her rideshare. 3 months into their partnership, and Chen Medical was showing promising results, both scientifically and financially. "You're still here," Liam's voice came from behind her, startling her from her thoughts. Sophie turned to find him in the doorway, his usual polished appearance slightly undone. Tie loosened, a day's stubble shadowing his jaw. "Waiting out the storm," she explained, gesturing to the window. "My ride keeps getting delayed." "I have my car, let me take you home," he offered, already reaching for his keys. The drive through rain-slicked streets was surprisingly comfortable, soft jazz playing from the car's speakers. Sophie found herself stealing glances at Liam's profile, noticing how his features softened in the dim light. "We received the new test results today," she said, breaking the silence. The compound is showing sustained effect in 90% of samples. Liam's hands tighten slightly on the wheel. That's remarkable. It means we're close, Liam. Really close. When they reached her apartment building, the rain had intensified. Without hesitation, Liam grabbed an umbrella and escorted her to the entrance. "Would you like to come up?" Sophie asked, surprising herself. "I have that financial projection you asked for, and I could make coffee." Something flickered in his eyes. Hesitation, interest, conflict. That would be helpful. Her apartment was modest, but warm. Bookshelves overflowing with medical journals and novels, plants on every windowsill, and photographs of her family throughout. Sophie busied herself in the kitchen while Liam examined a framed picture of her with her father. "He looks proud," Liam observed. Sophie smiled, handing him a steaming mug. He built the company from nothing. Everyone told him focusing on rare diseases was financial suicide. But he persisted. He believed some things matter more than money. She sat beside him, on the sofa. "Why venture capital, Liam? You clearly understand science. You could have been a researcher yourself." The question seemed to catch him off guard. For a moment, he stared into his coffee, as if searching for the right words. "After my sister died, my parents poured everything into medical research. Every dollar, every hour. They neglected their health, their marriage, everything." His voice remained steady, but Sophie sensed the effort it took. "When they died in a car accident, I was 19. The foundation they'd started was bankrupt, their research unfinished." Sophie reached out, her hand resting lightly on his. "So you became the opposite, the pragmatist." He said, "I became realistic," he corrected. "Good intentions without sustainable models help no one." Their eyes met, the space between them charged with understanding. "But you've changed since you started working with us," Sophie said softly. "I've seen it." Liam set down his mug, his fingers tentatively intertwining with hers. "Perhaps we've changed each other." The admission hung between them for a heartbeat before Sophie leaned forward, closing the distance. Their lips met gently, at first, a question being asked and answered. When they pulled apart, Liam's usually guarded expression had transformed into something vulnerable and genuine. "I didn't expect this," he confessed, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "I never did," she whispered, before drawing him back to her. The storm continued outside, but neither noticed as they discovered each other with increasing urgency. His hands tangling in her hair, her fingers working the buttons of his shirt. Months of tension dissolved into something elemental and honest as they moved to her bedroom, the soft lamplight casting shadows across newly revealed skin. Later, as they lay tangled in sheets, Sophie's head resting on his chest, Liam spoke into the darkness. "The milestone review is in 3 weeks." Sophie propped herself up to look at him. "Are you worried?" He said no, surprising them both. "I'm going to recommend full funding regardless of the outcome." "Why?" His fingers traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "Because some things really do matter more than money." As Sophie drifted to sleep in his arms, Liam remained awake, troubled by the document hidden in his briefcase, the one detailing his original plan to strip Chen Medical of its patents and sell them to the highest bidder once the acquisition was complete.
Healing research. 3 weeks passed without a word from Liam. Sophie worked remotely with the researchers who remained loyal to her, operating from a makeshift lab in her apartment. The legal battle for Chen Medical had begun, with preliminary hearings scheduled for the following month. On a rainy Wednesday morning, Sophie's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Dr. Chen, this is Ellie's mom, Rebecca." The woman's voice trembled with excitement. "The hospital called. Ellie's been selected for a trial treatment for Hallerman-Reese. They said it's based on your research." Sophie frowned in confusion. "My research? There's no approved trial yet. The doctor said it's been fast-tracked by the FDA for compassionate use. Ellie starts treatment tomorrow." After promising to investigate, Sophie immediately called her attorney, who was equally baffled.
No one had the authority to move her research to clinical trials, except Liam. That afternoon, a courier delivered a thick envelope to her door. Inside was a comprehensive file detailing an approved compassionate use program for 12 children with Hallermann-Reese syndrome, funded entirely by the newly established Donovan Medical Foundation. Beneath the medical documentation was a handwritten note. I couldn't undo what I'd done, so I did something new instead. If you want answers, come to the lab. L. Against her better judgment, Sophie found herself driving to Chen Medical. Her access card worked this time, the security guards nodding respectfully as she entered. She found Liam in the main laboratory, looking exhausted in rumpled clothes, his usually perfect hair disheveled. When he saw her, he straightened immediately. "You came," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Explain the trial," Sophie demanded, keeping her distance despite the urge to move closer. "I dissolved the acquisition agreement. Chen Medical remains your family's company with full research autonomy." She stared in disbelief. "And the trial?" "I created a separate foundation with my personal funds, not Donovan Capital money, to fast-track compassionate use approval." He ran a hand through his hair. "The patents remain with Chen Medical. The foundation just funded the production and clinical oversight." "Why would you do this? You're investors." "I bought them all out. All of them. Donovan Capital is mine alone now, and I've restructured its mission entirely." Sophie approached the workstation where patient files were spread out. "These are all Hallermann-Reese patients?" "All 12 known cases in North America under the age of 15. The foundation will cover all treatment costs for life, regardless of outcome." The magnitude of what he'd done began to sink in. "You risked everything." "No," Liam said softly. "I risked everything when I lied to you. This is just making things right." For the first time, Sophie allowed herself to really look at him. The shadows under his eyes, the genuine remorse in his expression, the nervous way he waited for her response. "My sister would have been 35 this year," he said when she remained silent. "I built my career thinking I was honoring her by being practical, by making the hard decisions others wouldn't. But you showed me I was wrong." His voice broke slightly. "Some things really do matter more than money, Sophie. You matter more." Sophie felt tears welling in her eyes. "I trusted you." "I know, and I'll spend every day trying to earn that trust back if you'll let me." Liam took a tentative step forward. "Not as business partners, not even necessarily as whatever we were becoming, just as someone who believes in what you're doing." "And if I say no?" "Then the foundation continues its work. Your company remains yours, and I'll watch from a distance as you change the world." His smile was sad but genuine. "I've learned enough from you to do that much right." Sophie moved to the microscope, examining the latest cell samples. "Ellie starts treatment tomorrow?" "Yes," Liam confirmed, keeping his distance. "I want to be there," she decided, "and I want full transparency on the foundation's operations." "Of course, I've already added you to the board." "As chairperson," Sophie amended, finally meeting his eyes. "If we're doing this, we're doing it my way." Something like hope flickered across Liam's face. "Does that mean—" "It means I'm willing to see if your actions match your words. The rest will take time." 6 months later, Sophie stood in a hospital room, watching Ellie draw in her new science journal, a gift from the Donovan Chen Foundation. The girl's latest test results showed remarkable improvement, her prognosis extended by years, possibly decades. Liam appeared in the doorway, no longer the polished venture capitalist, but someone softer, more genuine in simple button-downs and jeans. He carried coffee for Sophie and hot chocolate for Ellie. "The board approved funding for the expanded research facility," he told Sophie quietly, as Ellie excitedly showed her mother her latest drawing. "Construction starts next month." Sophie nodded approvingly. "And the new patient outreach program? Already identifying cases in underserved regions." Liam hesitated before adding, "Your father would be proud, Sophie." Their fingers brushed as he handed her the coffee, the simple touch sending familiar warmth through her. The journey back to trust had been slow and often painful, but with each promise kept and each child helped, the walls between them had gradually lowered. "Have dinner with me tonight?" Liam asked, his voice carrying none of his former confidence. "Just dinner." Sophie studied him, this man who had nearly destroyed everything she loved, then risked everything to make it right. The man who now spent his days ensuring children like his sister had futures to look forward to. "Just dinner," she agreed with a small smile. As they left Ellie's room together, Sophie allowed her hand to find his, their fingers intertwining naturally. Some wounds took time to heal, but as a doctor, Sophie knew something important. Healing always begins with a single moment of trust. And perhaps, this time, they were both ready to trust in something that mattered more than any business deal: each other.